3 years ago, my own family threw me out like garbage. Called me a disgrace, a failure, everything short of spitting on me as I walked out their door for what I thought was the last time. My father's words still echo in my head, "You're no son of mine." But last month, everything changed when I pulled an 8-year-old boy from the Chattahoochee River. The kid was drowning, going under for the third time when I dove in. What I didn't know was that this boy's father was Judge William Morrison, the same man who would be presiding over the custody hearing that could reunite me with my own son. See, while my family was busy writing me off, I was fighting the biggest battle of my life. Not just for my reputation, not just for my career, but for the right to see my 4-year-old boy, Tyler. The same family that disowned me had been feeding lies to my ex-wife's lawyers, painting me as an unfit father. They had no idea I'd been quietly building a case that would expose their own dirty secrets. The irony? The very people who called me worthless were about to watch me save not just a stranger's child, but potentially my own future. And when Judge Morrison asked who I was after I handed him his unconscious son, I had a choice: stay silent and anonymous, or tell him exactly who I was and risk everything. I chose truth. And what happened next would turn my family's world upside down and give me back the only family that truly mattered. This is the story of how losing everything taught me what actually matters, and how one moment of courage changed everything for a father who just wanted his son back. I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, in one of those picture-perfect suburban neighborhoods where everyone knows your business and appearances matter more than truth. The Hendersons, that's my family, have lived in the same brick colonial for 30 years. My father, Robert Henderson, runs the most successful insurance agency in Cobb County. To everyone else, he's a pillar of the community. To me, he was the man who made it clear that success was measured in dollar signs and social status, nothing else. My mother, Patricia, spent her days organizing charity galas and making sure our family looked flawless from the outside. My younger sister Emma followed their blueprint perfectly, married a lawyer, lives in Buckhead, sends her kids to private school. She was always the golden child, the one who never questioned their rules or expectations. Then there was me. I became a firefighter straight out of high school instead of going to college like they wanted. The disappointment in my father's eyes when I told him was crushing, but I thought he'd come around eventually. I was wrong. The humiliation started early. I remember my high school graduation party. Dad invited all his business associates and their families to our backyard. When Mr. Caldwell asked what college I'd be attending, Dad actually said, "Michael's taking a different path. Not everyone is cut out for higher education." The way he said it, with that fake smile and patronizing tone, made me feel about 2 inches tall in front of 50 people. But the worst moment came 3 years later at Emma's wedding reception at the Marietta Country Club. I'd just made it through the fire academy and was proud to finally be a certified firefighter. During his toast, Dad mentioned everyone's accomplishments, Emma's law degree, her husband's partnership track, even our cousin's promotion at the bank. When he got to me, he paused and said, "And Michael? Well, Michael serves the community in his own way." The polite laughter that followed felt like a slap. That's when I started planning what I called my grand gesture, something that would finally make them proud, force them to see my worth. I'd been secretly taking night classes toward my EMT certification and fire investigation credentials. I wanted to surprise them at Dad's 60th birthday party by announcing I'd been accepted into the Georgia Fire Academy's Advanced Leadership Program. I'd even been offered a position with the State Fire Marshal's office. It was my chance to prove I wasn't just some blue-collar disappointment. But I was also carrying a secret that would either vindicate me completely or destroy what little relationship I had left with them. For 6 months, I'd been quietly gathering evidence about something I'd discovered by accident, something that would expose the real reason Dad was so desperate to maintain his perfect reputation. It started when I responded to a commercial fire at one of his insured properties. The building owner mentioned how grateful he was that Dad had helped him understand his options before the fire. Something about the way he said it didn't sit right. So I started paying attention, cross-referencing fire reports with Dad's client list. What I found made my stomach turn. Dad had been coaching clients on how to make their properties more fire-prone before filing claims. Nothing technically illegal, he was too smart for that, but definitely insurance fraud. Worse, one of those fires had nearly killed a family when it spread faster than expected. A 2-year-old girl spent weeks in the hospital with smoke inhalation. I had copies of emails, recorded phone calls where he used coded language, financial records showing patterns too obvious to ignore. Enough evidence to end his career and possibly put him in prison. The question was whether I'd ever be desperate enough to use it. I never imagined that desperation would come when my own son was at stake, or that a drowning boy would force my hand in ways I never expected. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from around the world, and your support means everything as I share these personal stories. The call came on a Tuesday morning in June. My ex-wife Sarah's lawyer had filed for a modification of our custody agreement, seeking to terminate my visitation rights entirely. The reason? A stack of character references from my own family, painting me as unstable, unreliable, and potentially dangerous around children. Emma had apparently told them I'd shown up drunk to Tyler's 3rd birthday party, a complete lie. My mother claimed I'd been increasingly erratic and aggressive during family gatherings. Dad's statement was the worst. He questioned my judgment and emotional stability, suggesting I was unfit to be around any child, let alone my own son. I hadn't spoken to them in 8 months, not since they'd made it clear that my divorce somehow reflected poorly on their family image. But seeing their names on those legal documents, knowing they were actively trying to destroy my relationship with Tyler, ignited something in me I'd never felt before. The custody hearing was scheduled for July 15th. Dad's 60th birthday party was July 4th weekend. Perfect timing for my grand gesture, and maybe something more. The party was being held at the Cherokee Country Club, the same place where Dad had humiliated me at Emma's wedding. Mom had invited over 100 people, business associates, country club friends, city council members, even our state representative. It was going to be the social event of the summer in Marietta. I spent weeks preparing. I had my acceptance letter from the fire marshal's office, my advanced certifications, even a commendation letter from the fire chief. But I also printed copies of every piece of evidence I'd gathered about Dad's insurance schemes. I wasn't sure I'd use them, but I wanted them ready. The morning of the party, I got the call that changed everything. I was on duty at Station 12 when the emergency came through. Child in the water at the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area. A family picnic had gone wrong, and an 8-year-old boy had been swept away by the current near the Paces Mill area. When we arrived, I could see him about 30 yards out, struggling to stay above water. The current was strong from recent rains, and he was getting pulled toward the rapids downstream. Other responders were setting up water rescue equipment, but there wasn't time. The kid was going under. I didn't think. I just dove in fully clothed and swam harder than I ever had in my life. The current fought me every stroke, but I managed to reach him just as he went under for what would have been the final time. He was unconscious when I pulled him up, his lips already blue. I got him to shore and started CPR while my partner called for an ambulance. After what felt like hours but was probably 2 minutes, he coughed up water and started breathing. His father, who'd been standing on the shore in shock, dropped to his knees beside us. That's when I got a good look at him for the first time. Judge William Morrison. I recognized him from the courthouse, though we'd never met. He was scheduled to preside over my custody hearing in exactly 10 days. "Thank you," he kept saying as the paramedics took over. "You saved my son's life. What's your name? I need to know who you are." I could have lied. Could have given him a fake name and walked away. But something in his eyes, the same desperate love I felt for my own son, made me tell the truth. "Michael Henderson," I said. "Firefighter with Cobb County." He shook my hand with both of his, tears in his eyes. "I will never forget this, Michael. Never. If there's ever anything I can do for you." He had no idea he already could. But first, I had a party to attend. I drove straight home, showered off the river water, and put on the suit I'd bought specifically for this night. I had Dad's evidence folder in my car, my achievement certificates in my jacket pocket, and a plan that was rapidly evolving. When I walked into the Cherokee Country Club that evening, the party was in full swing. Dad was holding court near the bar, surrounded by his usual circle of admirers. Mom was fluttering between guests, playing the perfect hostess. Emma spotted me first, and I watched her face go from surprise to concern to something that looked almost like fear. Dad's reaction was exactly what I expected. His smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered, but I caught the flash of anger in his eyes. He excused himself from his conversation and walked over to me. "Michael, I'm surprised to see you here. It's your 60th birthday, Dad. I wouldn't miss it. I assume you got our messages about the situation with Tyler. We felt it was our civic duty to provide honest character references." The rage I'd been holding back for months started to simmer. Your civic duty. Right. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how it ends, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps me continue sharing these personal stories. Now, back to what happened next. The moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating came an hour into the party. Dad had just finished giving his thank you speech to the crowd, basking in applause and well wishes. He mentioned his wonderful family and how blessed he was to have built such a solid foundation of trust and integrity in both business and life. The irony was suffocating. I was standing near the back when Emma approached me, her voice low and urgent. "Michael, you need to leave. Before you do something you'll regret." "What makes you think I'm going to do something?" "Because I know that look. You had the same expression before you punched Danny Carver in high school." She wasn't wrong. But Danny Carver had never tried to take my son away from me. The breaking point came when Dad's business partner, Jim Wheeler, raised his glass for an impromptu toast. "To Robert Henderson," he announced loudly, "the most honest man I know. In 30 years of business, I've never met anyone with more integrity." The crowd murmured agreement. Several people nodded. Mom beamed with pride. And I snapped. I walked to the front of the room, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The conversations gradually died as people noticed me moving through the crowd. Dad's face went pale when he realized what was happening. "Excuse me," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'd like to say something about my father." "Michael, this isn't the time," Dad started, but I cut him off. "When is the time, Dad?" "When you're testifying against me in court next week. When you're telling a judge I'm unfit to see my own son." A collective gasp went through the room. Mom's face went white. Emma started moving toward me, but I held up a hand to stop her. "See, here's what you all don't know about Robert Henderson's integrity," I continued, pulling the folder from my jacket. "For the past 3 years, he's been coaching his insurance clients on how to commit fraud, teaching them how to make their properties more fire-prone before filing claims." "You're out of line," Dad said, his voice shaking with rage. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I opened the folder and held up the first document. "Here's an email where you advised Marcus Klein to check his electrical work 2 weeks before his warehouse burned down. Funny thing about that fire, I responded to it. Found 3 separate ignition points, all electrical, all exactly where you'd suggested he check." The room was dead silent. Jim Wheeler's glass was frozen halfway to his lips. "And here," I held up another paper, "are the financial records showing that 17 of your clients have filed fire insurance claims in the past 2 years. National average is 3%. Your clients? 46%. Either you're the unluckiest insurance agent in Georgia, or you're running a very profitable scam." Dad lunged toward me, but Judge Morrison's voice stopped him cold. "That's enough." I hadn't noticed him enter the room. He was still in casual clothes from the river, his hair damp, his son's small hand clasped in his. He must have come straight from the hospital. "Your Honor," Dad stammered, not recognizing him. "This is a private family matter. My son is having some kind of breakdown. Your son," Judge Morrison said quietly, walking closer, "saved my boy's life 4 hours ago. Dove into the Chattahoochee River without hesitation and pulled him from the current when he was drowning." The color drained from Dad's face as recognition dawned. Everyone in legal and business circles knew Judge Morrison. "Michael Henderson," the judge continued, "risked his own life for a complete stranger's child. And you're standing here calling him unfit to be around children." Mom sank into a nearby chair. Emma's mouth hung open. The crowd of party guests looked like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. Moreover, Judge Morrison said, looking directly at my father, "These allegations he's making are serious. If there's evidence of insurance fraud involving commercial properties, that's a matter for the state attorney general's office." I handed him the folder. "There's enough evidence here to warrant a full investigation, Your Honor, including a case where a family was nearly killed because a fire spread faster than expected after my father's consultation." Dad's legs seemed to give out. He grabbed the back of a chair for support, his face gray. "You're destroying our family," he whispered. "Noted. You did that the day you decided your reputation mattered more than your grandson having a father." I looked around the room one last time, at Mom's tears, at Emma's shocked face, at the crowd of people who'd spent the evening celebrating a man's integrity while he planned to destroy his own son in court. "Happy birthday, Dad." I walked out of the Cherokee Country Club and didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear the chaos erupting, voices rising, questions flying, Judge Morrison's calm voice cutting through it all as he spoke with Dad in tones I couldn't quite hear. My phone was buzzing with calls and texts before I even reached my car, but I ignored them all. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The aftermath hit like a Category 5 hurricane. By Sunday morning, Dad's insurance license had been suspended pending investigation. The state attorney general's office opened a formal inquiry, and 3 of his clients were already being questioned. The party footage, because of course someone had live-streamed parts of it on social media, went viral locally. Marietta insurance fraud exposed at birthday party made the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's front page. But the call that mattered most came Tuesday morning from Sarah's attorney. "My client wants to meet," she said. Judge Morrison contacted her personally. Apparently, there's been a significant development regarding the character references. The meeting was surreal. Sarah, who'd barely spoken to me in civil tones for 2 years, sat across from me in her lawyer's conference room with tears in her eyes. "I had no idea," she said quietly. "Your family, they made you sound dangerous. Unstable. They said you'd been drinking heavily, that you'd threatened Emma, that you couldn't hold down a job. None of it was true. Sarah, when have you ever seen me drunk? When have I ever been anything but gentle with Tyler?" She looked down at her hands. "Judge Morrison said you saved his son's life. That you didn't hesitate to risk everything for a child you'd never met. He said any father who would do that for a stranger's child clearly loves children deeply." Her lawyer slid a document across the table. "We're withdrawing the motion to terminate visitation. In fact, we'd like to discuss expanded custody." I couldn't speak. For months, I'd been terrified I'd lose Tyler forever. Now they were talking about giving me more time with him. But the surprises weren't over. That evening, I got an unexpected visitor. Emma stood on my apartment doorstep, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" We sat in my tiny living room, the silence stretching between us like a canyon. "I need you to know," she finally said, "I never wanted to hurt you." Dad said. "He said you were becoming unstable after the divorce. That you'd been making threats about the family business. He convinced me that helping with those character references was protecting Tyler." "Did you really think I'd hurt my own son?" "No," she whispered. "But I thought you might hurt yourself. And Dad made it sound like you were spiraling, like this was intervention, not destruction." She pulled out her phone and showed me a text thread with Dad. Months of messages painting me as increasingly erratic, potentially violent, definitely unstable. He'd been manipulating her the same way he'd manipulated his insurance clients. "There's something else," she said. "About the insurance thing. I think I know how you found out." My blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "The Morrison fire. The one where the little girl got hurt. That was Mom's friend Karen's granddaughter. When the girl was in the hospital, Mom kept saying how awful it was, how these old buildings are just so dangerous. But she said it weird, like she knew something more." She took a shaky breath. "Mom knows, Michael. She's known all along. She's been helping him cover it up." The betrayal hit deeper than Dad's insurance fraud. Mom, who'd raised us to believe in right and wrong, who'd made us return a candy bar I'd stolen when I was 6, had been complicit in something that nearly killed a child. Why are you telling me this? Because Tyler deserves better than a family built on lies. And because I'm tired of being Dad's accomplice. The following weeks brought revelations I never expected. The FBI got involved when they discovered Dad's scheme crossed state lines. 3 other insurance agents were implicated. The investigation revealed over $2 million in fraudulent claims, stretching back 5 years. But the most shocking discovery came from an unlikely source. Judge Morrison, who'd recused himself from my custody case due to personal involvement, had his clerk call me. The judge wanted you to know, she said, that your father attempted to contact his office last week. He wanted to discuss your upcoming hearing. Apparently, he'd researched who was presiding and thought he could influence the outcome. Dad had tried to corrupt a federal judge to keep me from my son. The man who'd spent my entire life preaching about honor and integrity had been willing to commit federal crimes to destroy me. The custody hearing, when it finally happened with a different judge, lasted exactly 12 minutes. Sarah testified that she'd been misled about my character. Judge Morrison submitted a written statement describing my actions at the river. My fire chief testified about my exemplary service record and character. I got joint custody. 50-50. Tyler would spend half his time with me. When I picked him up for our first overnight visit under the new arrangement, he ran to me like he always had, like nothing had changed. Because for him, nothing had. I was still just Dad. Daddy, Mommy says you're a hero. You saved a boy from drowning. I did what anyone would do, buddy. No, he said with 4-year-old certainty. Heroes save people. You're my hero. The grand gesture I'd planned, announcing my achievements at Dad's party, seemed pathetic now. Real recognition doesn't come from forcing people to see your worth. It comes from living your values when everything's on the line. But there was one more twist waiting. 3 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. Is this Michael Henderson? The firefighter? Yes. This is Marcus Klein. I think I need to talk to you. It's about your father. About what really happened with my warehouse. It turned out Dad had been more than just an advisor. He'd been taking percentages of the fraudulent payouts. Klein had been keeping records because he was afraid Dad might turn on him. He wanted to make a deal with prosecutors. The thing is, Klein said, your father said if anyone ever investigated, he'd claim his son was the real mastermind. Said you had access to all the fire reports, that you could have planned everything and made it look like his idea. Even in disgrace, Dad was trying to destroy me. But this time, I had Judge Morrison's protection, Tyler's love, and the truth on my side. Dad was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Mom moved to Florida to live with her sister, unable to face the shame in Marietta. Emma and I slowly rebuilt our relationship, bonded by our shared realization of who our father really was. The Cherokee Country Club expelled Dad from membership and sent me a formal letter of apology for hosting what they called that unfortunate evening. I threw the letter away. Their approval had never mattered anyway. Today, Tyler is 7 years old, and he spends every other week with me in the house I bought in Kennesaw, close enough to his mom's place for easy transitions, far enough from Marietta to start fresh. We have pancake Sundays and bedtime stories about brave firefighters who help people. He's never asked why Grandpa Henderson went away, and I've never felt the need to explain it to him yet. Some truths can wait until he's old enough to understand them. I still work for Cobb County Fire, but I also teach water rescue techniques now. What happened at the Chattahoochee taught me that sometimes being prepared for the worst moments in life means you're ready for the best opportunities too. Judge Morrison and I became unlikely friends. Our boys even had a playdate once, which was probably the most surreal afternoon of my life. Looking back, I realized that getting disowned was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to discover who I really was when I stripped away everyone else's expectations. I learned that family isn't about blood or last names or keeping up appearances. It's about showing up when it matters, diving in when someone needs help, and choosing truth even when it costs you everything. My real family now consists of Tyler, the firefighters who have my back every single day, Sarah, who's become a better co-parent than she ever was a wife, and Emma, who chose courage over comfort when it mattered most. We gather for Tyler's birthday parties and school plays, and there's no pretending, no performing, just love and support and the occasional argument about where to order pizza. The insurance money from Dad's fraudulent schemes was returned to the companies he'd defrauded. The little girl who was hurt in the Morrison fire, her name is Sophie, I learned, recovered completely and is now a healthy 8-year-old who wants to be a firefighter when she grows up. Her parents send me a Christmas card every year with her picture, reminding me why truth matters more than family loyalty. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing my father, if I wish I'd found another way. The answer is simple. Every time Tyler runs to me at pickup, every time he tells someone I'm his hero, every time I look in the mirror and see a man I'm proud to be, I know I made the right choice. Your family's approval can't define your worth, and their disapproval can't diminish it either. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones most invested in keeping you small. Sometimes saving yourself means letting them go. But here's what I want you to remember. When you choose truth over comfort, when you choose protecting the innocent over protecting the guilty, when you choose love over fear, you're not destroying your family. You're creating space for the family you actually deserve. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in having complicated family relationships. Drop a comment and tell me about a time when you had to choose between loyalty and truth. I read every single one, and your stories inspire me to keep sharing mine. And remember, the people who try to convince you that you're the problem for exposing their problems are usually the ones who know they're guilty. Trust your instincts. Choose truth. Dive in when someone needs saving, even if that someone is yourself. Thanks for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.